Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com with part 2 of my discussion about false climate prophets. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. In part 1, I showed how Barack Obama doesn't actually believe any of his climate propaganda about sea level rise. And in part 2, I'm going to discuss the world's leading climate fraudster, Michael Mann of Penn State and the University of Pennsylvania. The world has always been plagued by round-headed men who claim that the end of the world is near.
So let me ask you specifically about what the president just said, that the science tells us the window for action is rapidly narrowing. How rapidly and how narrow is it?
Rapid and narrow. We have less than a decade now to bring carbon emissions down globally by 50% if we are to remain on a path that keeps warming below that sort of catastrophic 1.5 degrees Celsius, 3 degree Fahrenheit warming of the planet, where the things that we're starting to see now become much worse and we get extremes that we haven't even seen before. And so that's not someplace we want to go. We want to prevent the problem from getting worse, and that means decarbonizing our economy rapidly.
So Michael Mann says we have less than a decade to cut global emissions by 50%, or we're going to face a catastrophic 1.5 degrees Celsius warming. The University of Maine shows that the global temperature anomaly is 0.1 degrees Celsius above the 1979 to 2000 average. That doesn't sound very scary. Not even the Princess and the Pea could detect that change. In 2006, the soon-to-be Nobel laureate Al Gore said we only had 10 years to save the planet from catastrophic global warming. And in 1989, the United Nations said we only had 10 years to save the planet from catastrophic global warming. Climate fraudsters like Michael Mann seem to love that 10-year window of opportunity propaganda. According to the United Nations in 1989, the Maldives should have been underwater a long time ago. But the Maldives seem to be doing just fine. It's almost like these climate alarmists are lying to the public in order to scare people. Joe Biden has been in Washington, D.C. for 50 years, and he's been in the White House for 10 of those 50. Governments have signed dozens of climate agreements, and none of them have done anything to slow the rise of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is actually accelerating. Growth rates of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere are near a record high under Joe Biden. This isn't surprising because the growth of coal, oil, and natural gas around the world has increased greatly in recent years, while solar and wind have made almost no progress. Emissions have been declining in North America and Europe for a long time, but in Asia, particularly China, emissions are skyrocketing. While the United States is shutting down its essential energy infrastructure, China is building new coal-fired power plants at a record rate. China didn't even show up for the pretend Glasgow climate conference, and they have a huge coal boom going on. At the same time China is massively ramping up their coal usage, they're cutting back on their investments in wind and solar. Michael Mann says we have to cut global emissions by 50% in the next 10 years or the world is going to be destroyed. But the United States portion of global emissions is only a small percentage, so there's nothing the United States could do to control global emissions. China has no interest in listening to professional fraudsters like Michael Mann. Michael Mann's appeal is limited to neurotic Western leftists. Even John Kerry admits that if the United States dropped off the map, it wouldn't make a difference in climate change. This article from The Guardian shows what the real agenda is. How millions of lives can be saved if the United States acts now on climate. The United States doesn't control CO2 emissions. If these people were serious, they'd be going after China, not the United States. What Joe Biden and Michael Mann are attempting to do is destroy the energy infrastructure in the United States. They're being paid lots of money by globalists to implement the Great Reset, which John Kerry says will happen at greater speed and intensity than people might imagine. Michael Mann operates in a vacuum. He refuses to debate and has blocked everyone on Twitter who disagrees with him. The press knows that Michael Mann is a reliable source of climate fraud, so they use him frequently for their propaganda. Toto was born shortly after Al Gore declared we only had 10 years to save the planet, and Toto is 15 years old now. You can visit Toto, Kyrie, Caesar, Upala, and Toki on the web at realclimatescience.com.